She was worth over $50 billion. But tonight, in her thrift store jacket and silence, she looked like she was worth nothing at all. Disguised as a struggling deaf traveler, Hannah Stone entered the Glass Pillar, Austin's most exclusive tech lounge, a place her father's empire secretly owned. She was ignored, mocked, and openly dismissed by staff and patrons alike who saw her signing as broken communication. Her father was about to lose faith in humanity entirely, ready to let his fortune crumble into algorithmic coldness. But then one overworked single-dad waiter saw something no one else did. He performed one simple, quiet act of recognition that changed 3 lives and the fate of a tech empire forever. Hannah Stone was not living. She was existing in a fortress of silent wealth. At 22, she was the sole heir to a Tesla executive fortune estimated at $3 billion. But to the board members who ran her father's empire, she was simply the glitch in an otherwise perfect lineage. Her deafness wasn't seen as a different way of experiencing the world. It was treated like a software bug that needed debugging. Tonight, that silence felt less like protection and more like a prison. From his corner office in the Austin Tech Corridor, her father Marcus Stone had spent the morning dismantling a Google acquisition attempt with surgical precision. At noon, he'd eaten a $200 lunch alone, tasting none of it. And at 3 p.m., he'd received news that made his heart skip. Literally. His cardiologist's words echoed, "Your daughter will inherit an empire, but who will inherit her heart?" Marcus had built his fortune on the belief that human connection was inefficient, that emotions were variables to be minimized. But watching his daughter navigate a world that saw her as defective had cracked something in his algorithmic soul. His empire was a monument to a man who had forgotten how to see people as more than data points. That evening, he conceived the ultimate test. He retrieved clothes from his housekeeper's donation pile. A faded denim jacket, worn jeans, scuffed sneakers. He watched as Hannah removed her custom hearing aids, her diamond studs, replacing them with the costume of invisibility. In the mirror, the transformation was shocking. The polished heiress was gone. In her place stood a young woman the world would overlook, dismiss, and ignore. She took the service elevator down 30 floors, walking 12 blocks through Austin's neon-lit streets. People pushed past her, their eyes sliding away from her attempts to communicate, a bubble of uncomfortable avoidance forming around her. She felt the sting of it, the cold irrelevance of being seen as less than. She arrived at the Glass Pillar, the crown jewel of Austin's tech scene. It was a lounge that required connections 6 degrees deep to even know it existed. Through a labyrinth of shell corporations, it was owned entirely by Stone Holdings. Hannah Stone owned every chair, every gold-plated fixture, every overpriced bottle of Japanese whiskey in its collection. She pushed open the heavy glass door. The warmth and low hum of power conversations washed over her, followed immediately by a wall of ice-cold judgment. The floor manager, a sharp-suited man named Derek, looked up from his tablet. His eyes scanned her from head to toe. The practiced smile vanished, replaced by barely concealed disgust. "Can I help you?" Derek asked, each word dripping with condescension. Hannah signed, "Table for 1, please." Derek actually laughed. A short, cruel bark. "Miss, I think you're confused. This is the Glass Pillar. Perhaps you're looking for the community center on 6th Street. Several tech executives waiting for their tables turned to stare. A venture capitalist in a $5,000 suit physically recoiled. Hannah repeated her sign, slower this time, maintaining eye contact. "We don't accommodate your type here," Derek said, turning back to his tablet in clear dismissal. "You're making the other guests uncomfortable." Hannah pointed to several empty tables in the VIP section. Derek's face flushed with anger. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a threatening whisper. Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but you're disrupting a high-value environment. Leave now, or I'll call security. Hannah stood her ground, signing, I am a customer. I wish to be served. Security. Derek snapped his fingers. Derek, what's the situation? A new voice, stressed, calculating, came from the bar area. It was the general manager, frantically assessing the scene versus potential PR damage. This individual is refusing to leave and making weird gestures at our clientele, Derek explained. The manager looked at Hannah, then at the gawking tech bros recording on their phones. He calculated optics versus problems. Fine, he hissed. Put her in the back corner by the service station. Get her in and out quickly before she affects anyone else's experience. Derek was furious at being overruled but obeyed. This way, he sneered, grabbing Hannah roughly by the elbow and marching her past pristine high tops and glowing tablets. Whispers followed them. Gross. How did security miss that? She's ruining the whole vibe. Can't they screen better? Derek shoved Hannah into the worst table in the house. A cramped two-top squeezed next to the service corridor, where staff rushed past every 30 seconds, bathing her in harsh light and chaos. The table was sticky, unset, forgotten. Here, Derek said, dropping a menu. Don't bother the staff. They're busy serving actual members. For 30 minutes, Hannah sat invisible in her own inheritance, watching as servers hurried past with their eyes trained away from her table as if her presence were contagious. She was just a young woman in a thrift jacket. She was no one. The coldness was worse than the Austin winter outside. Her father's test was revealing exactly what he'd feared, that his world had no room for hearts that beat differently. She was ready to leave, to retreat to her silent tower and let the algorithms win. And then he approached. Kaito Reed was drowning in double shifts and single dad exhaustion. His Toyota was making that sound again. His daughter's violin lessons were due, and his Japanese language app kept reminding him he'd missed another day. Tonight he was working as a floater, the lowest position, helping senior servers while they earned the real tips from crypto millionaires and venture capital sharks. Through the kitchen's diamond window, he saw the scene unfold. A young woman, alone, signing what looked like please to an empty corner. The other servers were actively avoiding her table like it was radioactive. Table 23, he heard Derek complaining to the manager. She's probably going to steal something. Just ignore her. She'll get the message. Kaito looked closer. She reminded him of his late wife in her college photos, that same quiet dignity when the world tried to make her invisible for being different. The way people looked through her instead of at her. He made a choice that would change everything. Setting down his tray of craft cocktails, he walked straight to table 23. The woman looked up, startled by someone actually approaching. Her eyes behind her glasses were surprisingly sharp, intelligent, analyzing him. "Good evening," he said softly, then repeated it in sign language, one of the few phrases he'd learned from YouTube tutorials. Her expression shifted from wariness to shock. No one in this place had tried to communicate in her language. "They're not letting you serve me," she signed back, testing him. Kaito pulled out his phone, opened his translation app, and typed, "I'm serving you. Everyone deserves respect." Her eyes filled with something that might have been tears. He spread a clean napkin over the sticky table, poured fresh water from a pitcher, and asked in careful sign, "Tea? It's cold tonight." Across the room, Derek was making cutting motions across his throat. The other servers were whispering about career suicide. But Kaido had spent too many nights teaching himself Japanese phrases to honor his daughter's heritage to let another person's culture be dismissed. When he returned with premium sencha tea, prepared the traditional way, the way his wife had taught him, Hana was waiting, more alert, studying him. "Your tea, miss," he said, setting down the service. That's when she dropped her guard completely. As she reached for the cup, something slipped from her jacket pocket. A small silver disc that caught the light. It was a company badge, but not just any badge. It was the Tesla executive seal, the one Kaido had seen in tech magazines, worth more than his annual salary. She moved to cover it, panic flashing in her eyes, but Kaido had already seen it. More importantly, he'd seen her, not as a badge or a balance sheet, but as someone who'd been hurt by a world that measured worth in decibels and dollars. Instead of treating her differently, instead of sudden deference or calculated advantage-seeking, Kaido did something that stunned her. He pretended not to notice the badge at all. Instead, he bowed. A deep, respectful bow he'd practiced from YouTube videos about Japanese business culture. When he straightened, he looked her directly in the eyes and signed a phrase he'd memorized for his daughter. "It is an honor to meet someone with such strength." In that moment, from a shadowy VIP booth across the room, Marcus Stone stopped breathing. His daughter, his brilliant, unbreakable daughter, was finally being seen for who she truly was. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. The 47th floor of Stone Holdings gleamed like a temple to digital supremacy, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a god's-eye view of the Potomac River Valley. Marcus Stone stood behind his obsidian desk, watching algorithms dance across holographic displays. Each flickering number representing millions in market movement, thousands of jobs, hundreds of lives reduced to profitable equations. His empire stretched from Maryland to Mongolia, Tesla partnerships, quantum computing ventures, AI development labs that made ChatGPT look like a pocket calculator. At 58, he commanded a fortune that economists struggled to quantify, somewhere north of 50 billion, south of infinity. Yet as he stared at the latest quarterly reports, all he could see were the hollow spaces between the numbers. The board meeting had ended an hour ago. 16 of the sharpest minds in tech had filed out of his conference room, each one treating his daughter like a broken peripheral device that somehow kept showing up to meetings. The Stone Girl, they called her when they thought he wasn't listening. Poor Marcus, imagine dealing with that at home. His phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Sarah Chun, his private cardiologist. "Marcus, we need to discuss your latest results. The stress markers are concerning. When can you come in?" He deleted the message without responding. Stress markers. As if his body didn't already know what his mind refused to acknowledge, that he'd built a cathedral of silicon and steel on the foundation of his own isolation. The elevator chimed softly. Marcus didn't turn around. Only one person had access to his private floor after hours. "Dad?" Hannah's voice carried the particular gentleness she used when she sensed his darker moods. "You missed dinner again." He watched her reflection approach in the window glass. 22 years old, brilliant enough to decode quantum encryption for fun, fluent in 4 languages plus ASL, and cursed with a father who'd taught the world to see her silence as deficit rather than depth. "The Singapore acquisition is moving forward," he said, still facing the window. "Chun Industries wants to partner with us on the Neural Interface project." "That's wonderful," she replied, though something in her tone suggested she wasn't talking about Singapore. Marcus finally turned. Hannah stood in the doorway wearing her usual after-work uniform. Designer jeans, cashmere sweater, the diamond studs he'd given her for her 18th birthday catching the light from his desk lamps. She looked like money, which in their world meant she looked like power. But power, he'd learned, was useless if no one bothered to see the person wielding it. They want to meet next week, he continued. The whole board will be there. You should come. Hannah's hands moved in fluid ASL. So they can spend another hour pretending I'm furniture? The question hit him like malware in his system, corrupting everything he thought he understood about success. How many meetings had he sat through, watching grown men worth hundreds of millions treat his daughter like she was buffering? How many times had he told himself it was just business, just the way the world worked? It's not, he started, then stopped. It absolutely was personal. Everything about their world was personal, disguised as professional efficiency. Dad, when's the last time anyone in your empire talked to me instead of about me? Her signing was sharp now, cutting. When's the last time someone saw me as more than your broken daughter? The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like clarity, the first honest code he'd received in years. His empire wasn't built on innovation or vision. It was built on a pyramid of people who'd learned to value performance over humanity, efficiency over empathy. What if? He said slowly, an idea forming like an algorithm finding its solution. What if we tested them? Hannah raised an eyebrow. Tested who? All of them. The board, the partners, the people who think they deserve to inherit what we've built. He moved to his private safe, fingers dancing over the biometric lock. What if we found out who they really are when they think no one important is watching? The safe opened with a whisper. Inside, beneath classified contracts and encrypted drives, was a box he hadn't touched in years. His mother's things, kept hidden from a world that demanded he be more American, more corporate, more everything except what he actually was. He pulled out a small silver disc, the family mon his mother had worn, a stylized Kiri bloom that represented dignity in simplicity. The board members who joked about his mysterious past had no idea they were mocking the only part of him worth preserving. Tonight, he said, looking up at his daughter, we're going to find out if anyone in our world still has a soul. 20 minutes later, Hannah stood in front of her bedroom mirror, systematically dismantling her life of privilege. Off came the diamond studs, replaced by simple silver dots from a drugstore pack. Off came the custom hearing aids that cost more than most people's cars, replaced by basic amplification devices that barely worked. The cashmere sweater joined the designer jeans in a pile on her bed, swapped for clothes she'd bought for a college volunteering project and never worn. Faded denim jacket, basic t-shirt, worn sneakers that had seen actual miles. The transformation was startling. Without the armor of wealth, she looked younger, more vulnerable. She looked like someone the world might overlook, dismiss, ignore. She looked exactly like the test subject her father needed. Are you sure about this? She signed to her reflection, then realized the absurdity of asking herself a question in a language most people couldn't understand. That was exactly the point. She grabbed her old backpack, college-aged, fraying at the edges, and headed downstairs. Her father was waiting by the service elevator, himself transformed. Gone was the commanding CEO in his $10,000 suit. In his place stood someone she barely recognized. Jeans, plain sweater, the kind of invisible middle-aged man who blended into crowds. The glass pillar, he said as they descended. Austin's most exclusive tech lounge. Reservations are invitation only. Membership costs more than most people's houses. And you own it, she signed. Through about 6 shell companies, yes. Nobody there knows that. To them, you're just... He paused, choosing his words carefully. A broken girl who can't speak, she finished for him. The words hung in the elevator's silence. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. Maybe his heart finally rebelling against the weight of what he'd let his world become. The Austin night wrapped around them like code, neon algorithms spelling out possibilities in every storefront. Young tech workers streaming between bars and startups. The air electric with the promise of the next big thing. Hannah walked beside her father through streets she'd never seen from ground level, feeling the city's pulse through her feet instead of through tinted car windows. The glass pillar rose 30 stories into the Texas sky, its facade a masterpiece of architectural arrogance. Every surface reflected light back at the street like a mirror, creating the impression that the building was simultaneously transparent and impenetrable. "Remember," Marcus said as they approached the entrance, "I'll be watching from the VIP section. Just be yourself." Which self? The daughter of a billionaire or the broken girl? "The self that deserves to be seen," he replied, then disappeared around the corner toward the VIP entrance. Hannah stood alone before the glass doors, watching the elite of Austin tech flow in and out like data through fiber optic cables. She took a breath, pushed open the door, and stepped into the crucible. The warmth hit her first. Climate control set to pharmaceutical precision. Then came the sound. A low hum of power conversations, deals being made, futures being bought and sold in cryptocurrency and coffee. The interior was a study in intimidating luxury. Gold fixtures, marble floors, crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most houses. And everyone, absolutely everyone, looked like they belonged here except her. The floor manager appeared as if summoned by some algorithm that detected social anomalies. Derek Williamson, according to his gold nameplate, was sharp-suited perfection with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Good evening," he said, scanning her outfit with professional disdain. "Are you lost?" Hannah's hands moved in careful ASL. "Table for one, please." Derek's expression shifted from polite confusion to barely concealed revulsion. "Miss, I think there's been some confusion. This is the glass pillar. We're a private membership lounge for tech professionals." She repeated her request, slower this time, maintaining eye contact. We can't accommodate." Derek struggled with language that wouldn't get him sued. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the community spaces downtown." Around them, conversations had quieted. Hannah felt the weight of stares, phones probably recording her disruption for social media content. A woman in Louboutin heels whispered to her companion, "Is she homeless? How did she get past security?" Derek's patience, already thin, evaporated completely. "Ma'am, you're making our members uncomfortable. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Hannah pointed to the clearly visible empty tables throughout the main dining area. Her signing became more animated, frustrated. "I see available seats. I can pay." "Security." Derek's voice cut through the ambient noise like a server alert. "What's the situation here?" The general manager materialized beside Derek, his practiced crisis management smile already in place. His mental calculation was visible. Potential PR disaster versus keeping high-value members happy. This individual is refusing to leave and making gestures that are disturbing our clientele, Derek explained. The manager looked at Hannah, then at the growing crowd of onlookers pulling out phones. In the age of viral videos, even private clubs had to manage their optics. "Fine," he hissed to Derek. "Back corner, table 23. Get her seated and out of sight before this becomes a thing." Derek's jaw tightened at being overruled, but he complied. "This way," he said through gritted teeth, gripping Hannah's arm with just enough pressure to communicate his displeasure. He marched her through the main floor like a perp walk, past tables of venture capitalists and startup founders who watched with the fascinated horror of people observing a traffic accident. The whispers followed them. "How embarrassing. The quality control here is really slipping. I'm posting about this. Unacceptable." Table 23 was the glass pillar's version of Siberia, crammed into a corner next to the service corridor, where servers rushed past every 30 seconds with trays and dirty dishes. The table was sticky, unset, clearly forgotten by the cleaning staff. "Here," Derek said, dropping a menu onto the stained surface. "The staff is very busy tonight serving actual members, so please don't expect much attention." For the next 30 minutes, Hannah sat in her own inheritance, watching her father's employees treat her like toxic waste. Servers moved past her table with choreographed avoidance, their eyes trained away as if direct visual contact might be contagious. She was a ghost haunting her own castle. From across the room, in a shadowy VIP booth behind smart glass that could shift from transparent to opaque with a touch, Marcus Stone watched his daughter disappear into the background noise of his own empire. Every ignored gesture, every averted gaze, every moment of casual cruelty confirmed what he'd feared most. He'd built a world that had no room for hearts that beat differently. His phone buzzed with notifications. Board members posting on social media about the disruption at their favorite club, joking about security failures and membership standards. They were mocking his daughter without knowing it, performing their callousness for internet points. He was about to stand, about to reveal himself and rain hellfire on every person in the building, when something shifted in his peripheral vision. A server was walking directly toward table 23. Kaito Reed had been invisible for most of his 35 years, and he'd gotten comfortable with that invisibility. Single fathers working double shifts, guys with engineering degrees serving overpriced cocktails to cryptocurrency millionaires. They were the background characters in other people's success stories. Tonight he was pulling floater duty again, the restaurant equivalent of being assigned to help everyone while belonging to no one. It meant running food, clearing tables, and absorbing the casual contempt of senior servers who treated him like he was one step above a dishwasher. Through the kitchen's porthole window, he'd watched the drama at the host station unfold. A young woman, probably his daughter's age, being treated like a malfunction in the system. He'd seen her signing, fluid, expressive ASL that reminded him of poetry in motion. The other servers were gossiping about it over their prep work. Table 23 is a dead zone tonight. Derek's orders: don't waste time on the charity case. She's probably going to try to steal something. Just ignore her. She'll get the message and leave. Kaito had spent the last 3 years teaching himself Japanese through phone apps and YouTube videos, trying to honor his late wife's heritage for their daughter May. He understood what it felt like to communicate in a language the world didn't want to hear. He looked through the window again. The young woman sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the sticky table surface. She wasn't bothering anyone. She wasn't causing problems. She was just there, existing in a space that had decided she didn't belong. It reminded him of May's first day at her new school, when kids had mocked her bento lunch and called her weird for bowing to her teachers. The same casual dismissal, the same reduction of a whole human being to a single inconvenient difference. He made a choice that would change everything. Setting his tray of craft cocktails on the service station, Kaito walked directly to table 23. The woman looked up, startled by someone actually approaching rather than avoiding her table. "Good evening," he said softly, then repeated it in the basic ASL he'd learned from online tutorials, finger-spelled letters forming careful words. Her expression shifted from resignation to surprise. In this temple of tech innovation, no one had bothered to innovate basic human communication. She signed back, testing him. "They told you not to serve me." Kaito pulled out his phone, opened his translation app, and typed, "I serve everyone, no exceptions." Something flickered in her eyes. Maybe gratitude, maybe disbelief that such a simple concept needed stating. He grabbed a clean linen napkin from his apron and spread it over the sticky table surface with the same care he'd use for any guest. From the service station, he retrieved a water glass and pitcher, pouring fresh water with the kind of attention usually reserved for VIP members. "Would you like some tea?" he signed carefully, having practiced the phrase for situations like this. "It's cold tonight." Across the restaurant, Derek was making sharp, cutting motions across his throat, his face red with rage. Other servers whispered about career suicide and lost tips. But Kaido had spent too many nights learning phrases in languages his daughter needed to hear to let another person's communication be dismissed as worthless. When he returned from the kitchen with a proper tea service, Premium Sancha prepared the traditional way, the way Yuki had taught him before cancer took her voice. The young woman was sitting straighter, more alert, as if his small act of recognition had woken something in her that had been sleeping. "Your tea, miss," he said, setting the ceramic pot down with the reverence due to a ritual that connected generations. That's when she dropped her guard. As she reached for the cup with hands that moved like water, something slipped from her jacket pocket. A silver disc that caught the ambient light. It was small, unremarkable to most eyes, but Kaido had seen enough tech industry events to recognize the Tesla executive seal when he saw it. Her fingers moved to cover it, panic flashing across her features, but he'd already seen it. More importantly, he'd seen her, not as a balance sheet entry or a networking opportunity, but as someone who'd been hurt by a world that measured worth in algorithms and market caps. Instead of sudden deference, instead of the calculated friendliness people usually deployed when they discovered wealth, Kaido did something that stunned her. He pretended not to notice the badge at all. Instead, he executed a deep, formal bow, one he'd practiced from YouTube videos about Japanese business etiquette. When he straightened, he looked directly into her eyes and signed a phrase he'd memorized for May. "It is an honor to serve someone with such grace." From his shadowy booth across the restaurant, Marcus Stone felt his heart stop, restart, and calibrate itself to a new rhythm. His daughter, his brilliant, unbreakable daughter, was finally being seen for who she was rather than what she couldn't do. For the first time in years, Marcus Stone smiled like he meant it. The test had found its first passing grade. As Hannah lifted the teacup to her lips, Kaido caught sight of something else. Not the Tesla badge she'd hastily covered, but a small embroidered symbol on her worn backpack. His breath caught in his throat. It was subtle, almost hidden in the fading fabric, but unmistakable to someone who'd spent 3 years studying Japanese culture. The kirimon, a stylized paulownia flower that had adorned everything from samurai armor to government seals. His late wife Yuki had taught him about the kiri, how it represented honor, dignity, and the imperial connection to beauty that transcended material wealth. To see it here on this young woman's bag was like finding a piece of his wife's heritage in the most unexpected place. Without thinking, Kaido spoke in careful, practiced Japanese. "Anata no cabin no mon wa totemo atsukushi desu." Your bag's crest is very beautiful. Hannah's teacup stopped halfway to her lips. Her eyes widened, searching his face for some explanation of how this overworked server in Austin, Texas, could know the significance of a symbol she'd never seen anyone else recognize. "Nihongo jie dekamasu ka? Do you speak Japanese?" She signed, then caught herself and whispered the words aloud, her voice rusty from disuse in public spaces. "Sukashi." A little, Kaido replied with a self-deprecating smile. "My wife was Japanese American. I'm learning for our daughter, so she can connect with that part of herself." "Was?" She signed gently. "Cancer 2 years ago," he said simply. "But her spirit lives in the language, in the culture, in the idea that broken things can become more beautiful than they ever were whole." Hannah stared at him, this stranger who somehow understood languages both spoken and unspoken. "Kintsugi," she whispered. "Hi." "Kintsugi," he nodded, recognizing the concept of repairing broken pottery with golden veins. making the repair more beautiful than the original. Your father, he honors the old ways? Before Hannah could respond, a booming voice cut through their quiet exchange like malware corrupting a peaceful program. Well, 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 what do we have here? Saul Sterling, venture capitalist extraordinaire and walking embodiment of everything toxic about Silicon Valley culture, had noticed the interaction at table 23. Worth approximately $400 million in portfolio companies, Sterling treated every space he entered as his personal networking opportunity and every person as either an asset or an obstacle. He approached their corner with the swagger of someone who'd never been told no, his Armani suit immaculate, his smile predatory. Behind him trailed his usual entourage. 2 junior associates who laughed at his jokes and a startup founder who owed him everything. "Kaido, my man," Sterling boomed, though they'd never been introduced. "I see you found yourself a new project. How charitable of you." The word dripped with condescension. Hannah's hands moved instinctively to sign a response, then stopped when she saw Sterling's reaction. "Oh, fantastic," Sterling laughed, loud enough to draw attention from nearby tables. "She's one of those." "Hey, sweetie," he said, speaking slowly and loudly as if volume could bridge the communication gap. "Can you understand me? Do you need me to write this down?" He mimed exaggerated gestures, his associates snickering behind him. Several other patrons had turned to watch the entertainment. Kaido stepped slightly forward, positioning himself between Sterling and Hannah. "Mr. Sterling, perhaps you'd like to return to your table? I'm sure your associates are missing your insights." "Oh, I'm sorry." Sterling's voice rose another decibel. "Are you her translator now? Does she come with subtitles?" He turned to his group. "This is exactly what's wrong with the service industry these days. They let anyone in. Then the staff has to play babysitter to people who can't even function in normal society." Hannah's face had gone pale, but her eyes blazed with contained fury. Her hands moved in sharp, angry SL. "Tell this algorithmic waste of code that I understand every word he's saying." Kaido's Japanese lessons hadn't included translation for that particular phrase, but he got the general sentiment. "She says she understands you perfectly, and she'd appreciate being treated with basic human decency." Sterling laughed harder. "Basic human decency? This is the glass pillar, not a charity case processing center. Look around. You see anyone else here who needs special accommodations? This is a place for people who can actually contribute to conversations, not make everyone else uncomfortable with their limitations." The restaurant had gone quieter, conversations pausing as people pulled out phones to record what was clearly becoming Austin tech scene drama. Derek, the floor manager, appeared at Sterling's shoulder like a heat-seeking missile, having detected a potential PR crisis. "Mr. Sterling, perhaps I can resolve this situation," Derek said smoothly. "Kaido, you're needed in the kitchen immediately." It was a clear dismissal, an order to abandon Hannah to Sterling's verbal assault. Kaido felt the familiar weight of economic pressure. Sterling's investment company was exactly the kind of client that made or broke careers in Austin's service industry. Crossing him meant professional suicide. But as he looked at Hannah's face, he saw something that reminded him of May coming home from school in tears, of Yuki in her hospital bed asking him to promise their daughter would never have to hide who she was to make others comfortable. "I'm exactly where I need to be," Kaido said quietly. Sterling's expression shifted from amusement to irritation. "Excuse me? I said I'm where I need to be, serving a guest who deserves the same respect as anyone else in this restaurant." "This isn't a guest," Sterling snapped. "This is a charity project that wandered in off the street. And you're embarrassing yourself by pretending otherwise." He reached over Kaido to grab his drink from a nearby table, gesturing wildly as he spoke. Look, I get it. You're trying to be the hero here, very noble. But this is the real world, where people who can't communicate effectively don't belong in professional environments. She needs to be in a special program somewhere, not taking up space in places where actual business gets done. The drink sloshed in his glass as his gestures became more animated. I mean, what's next? Are we going to start hiring people who can't speak for client presentations? Should we put warning labels on our networking events? May contain individuals who require special accommodation? This politically correct nonsense is destroying the efficiency of... Sterling's rant was interrupted by physics. His wild gesturing sent his glass of expensive whiskey flying directly onto Hannah's lap, the amber liquid soaking through her jeans and spreading across the table. Oh, for fuck's sake! Sterling exploded. Now look what you made me do. I told you to watch out for the drink. Why didn't you move when I was gesturing? The restaurant went dead silent. Every conversation stopped. Every phone camera focused on their corner. Hannah sat motionless, whiskey dripping from her clothes, her face a mask of controlled humiliation. Her hands moved in small, tight signs. I should go. Derek seized the moment like a predator spotting wounded prey. That's it, he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. This situation has gone too far. Kaito, escort this individual out of the building immediately, or you're fired. The ultimatum hung in the air like a virus waiting to execute. Kaito felt the weight of every financial pressure in his life. Rent, May's school fees, his car payment, the 1,000 small expenses that kept single fathers awake at 3 a.m. doing math that never quite worked out. He looked at Sterling, still ranting about ruined evenings and disrupted business. He looked at Derek, whose smile promised professional destruction. He looked at the crowd of tech elite with their phones out, ready to turn Hannah's humiliation into social media content. Then he looked at Hannah, really looked at her, saw past the whiskey stains and thrift store clothes to the quiet dignity she maintained even while being publicly degraded. Saw the way she held herself like Yuki used to, with grace that no amount of cruelty could touch. He thought about the Kirimon on her bag, about broken things becoming more beautiful, about the promise he'd made to his dying wife that their daughter would grow up in a world where different didn't mean less than. Kaito made his choice. No, he said simply. Derek blinked. Excuse me? No, I won't escort her out. She's done nothing wrong except exist in a way that makes small people uncomfortable. Sterling's face turned purple. Are you out of your mind? Do you know who I am? I could buy and sell this entire restaurant. Then maybe you should buy some manners while you're at it, Kaito replied, stepping closer to Hannah's chair. And as for who you are, you're a man who just assaulted a young woman with a drink, and then blamed her for not dodging fast enough. Derek was frantically texting someone, probably calling security. Kaito, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you both out. Fine, Kaito said, pulling out his own phone. But first, let me make sure everyone understands what just happened here. He opened his camera app and started recording, panning across Sterling's flushed face, Derek's panicked expression, and the crowd of onlookers. For the record, this woman came here for a quiet dinner and was subjected to harassment, discrimination, and assault because she communicates differently than you do. And when one employee tried to treat her with basic human dignity, the management threatened his job. Sterling lunged forward, trying to grab the phone. Stop recording. This is a private establishment. Kaito stepped back, still filming. Actually, this is a public accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And what you just did on camera is about to become very expensive for you. The crowd was murmuring now, some looking uncomfortable as they realized they'd been witnessing something more serious than dinner theater. Several people had stopped recording, lowering their phones as the social media entertainment value curdled into legal liability. Derek was on his phone now, speaking rapidly to someone in urgent tones. Security guards appeared at the edges of the dining room, moving toward their corner. Kaito reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, extracting a $20 bill and placing it on the sticky table. "For the tea," he told Hannah. "And for what it's worth, you deserve better than this place." He offered her his arm, a gesture of escort rather than ejection. "Shall we?" Hannah looked up at him with something like wonder. In a room full of people worth millions, the only one willing to risk anything for her was a single father making minimum wage plus tips. She stood, dignity intact despite the whiskey stains, and took his offered arm. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, but the main restaurant illumination died, leaving everyone in dim amber shadows. The music stopped. Even the kitchen noise ceased. Then the public address system crackled to life, but the voice that emerged wasn't human. It was the smooth, artificial cadence of advanced text-to-speech AI. "Good evening, valued guests of the Glass Pillar," the synthetic voice announced. "This is an automated message from the building's management system. We have been monitoring tonight's events through our comprehensive security network." Derek's face had gone white. "What the hell?" Facial recognition has identified all parties involved in incident 2024-10-31-2247. The AI continued. "Video analysis confirms violations of civil rights law, corporate harassment policies, and basic human decency standards." Sterling was frantically looking around for someone to yell at, but the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Mr. Derek Williamson, floor manager, employment termination, effective immediately. Reason: failure to maintain inclusive environment as required by company policy section 4.7. Your access credentials have been revoked." Derek's phone, tablet, and key card all beeped simultaneously, their screens going dark. "Mr. Saul Sterling, venture capitalist, you are hereby banned from this establishment. Security footage of tonight's assault has been forwarded to Austin Police Department Incident Reporting System. You have 10 minutes to vacate the premises." Sterling was sputtering, his face cycling through colors like a broken display. "This is impossible. You can't just... Who's doing this?" The synthetic voice continued with mechanical precision. "Kaito Reed, former service staff. You have been selected for immediate promotion to Director of Human Dignity Initiatives, Stone Holdings. Your new salary will be $200,000 annually, plus comprehensive benefits and housing allowance." The restaurant erupted in confused chatter. People were Googling Stone Holdings on their phones, trying to understand what was happening. And now, the AI voice said, "The owner of this establishment would like to address tonight's events personally." The emergency lights shifted, focusing on a booth in the VIP section that had been dark all evening. A figure stood up slowly, and as he moved into the light, several people in the crowd gasped in recognition. Marcus Stone stepped forward, no longer the invisible middle-aged man in casual clothes. His presence filled the room like a software update overriding everything that had come before. "Hello," he said, his natural voice carrying easily across the silent restaurant. "I'm Marcus Stone. I own this building, this restaurant, and approximately 40% of the tech companies that employ everyone in this room." He walked slowly toward table 23, every eye following him. Tonight was a test. A simple evaluation of whether the people who run my empire, eat at my restaurants, and profit from my investments still remember that business is ultimately about humans serving other humans. Derek tried to speak, but Marcus held up a hand. "You failed. Spectacularly, Mr. Sterling, you've just lost access to every Stone Holdings subsidiary, partnership, and investment opportunity. That's roughly 60% of the Austin tech ecosystem. I hope your assault on a young woman was worth approximately $50 million in lost deal flow. Sterling's mouth opened and closed like a crashed program trying to restart. Marcus reached Hannah, who was staring at him with an expression of amazement and exasperation in equal measure. Really, Dad? AI dramatic reveals. Your daughter suggested the ChatGPT integration. Marcus signed back, then spoke aloud for the room. She thought it would be more efficient than a traditional confrontation. She was right. He turned to Kaito, who was standing perfectly still, trying to process a promotion that had just changed his life in ways he couldn't calculate. Mr. Reed, your new position starts Monday. You'll be heading up a new division focused on accessibility, inclusion, and what I call algorithmic empathy. Teaching our systems to recognize human value that can't be quantified in traditional metrics. Kaito found his voice. Sir, I don't understand. Why me? Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile many people in the restaurant had ever seen from him. Because tonight, when it would have cost you everything, you chose to see my daughter as a person worth defending. That's the algorithm I want running my companies. He addressed the room one final time. To everyone else, you've just witnessed what happens when efficiency becomes more important than empathy, when performance metrics matter more than human dignity. Consider this a system update. We're implementing new values across all Stone Holdings properties, and those values prioritize connection over calculation. The lights came back up gradually, normal illumination returning to the restaurant. The AI voice made one final announcement. Incident resolution complete. Thank you for your cooperation with this evening's ethics audit. Regular dining service will resume momentarily. As conversations slowly restarted and people began processing what they'd witnessed, Marcus turned to his daughter. How do you feel? Like I just watched you hack the entire concept of revenge. She signed back. Also, you owe me new jeans. Kaito was still standing in the same spot, holding the $20 bill he'd placed on the table, trying to understand how serving tea with respect had just changed his entire life trajectory. Mr. Reed, Marcus said gently, that offer is real. But more than that, you've given my daughter something I couldn't buy with $50 billion. You saw her for who she is instead of what she isn't. That's worth more than money. Hannah moved to Kaito's side and signed, Thank you for seeing me. He signed back, carefully, Thank you for teaching me what courage looks like. As they walked toward the exit together, father, daughter, and the server who'd shown them that in a world increasingly run by algorithms, the most valuable code was still written in the language of human kindness. Kaito's phone buzzed with a text from May. Dad, how was work tonight? He looked at Hannah, who was helping her father respond to frantic messages from board members, and at Marcus, who was already planning how to rebuild his empire with empathy as its core operating system. Better than I could have programmed, he texted back. Much better than I could have programmed. Outside the glass pillar, Austin's neon skyline painted the night in possibilities. And for the first time in years, all three of them believed that broken things could indeed become more beautiful than they'd ever been whole. The algorithm of kindness had finally found its perfect execution.